Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram. So in the last class we were studying the 186th and the 187th verse of the Vivekachudamani, where we find that the points, the pertinent points which were discussed, the three points which were discussed were that the experiences of the joy and misery, the bhoga, experiences of joys and misery, and also the experience of agency, the karta, agency of karta and the agency of bhoga. These both belong to the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the knowledge shit. So for that, this both the experience of joys and sorrow as well as the experience of agency belongs to that Vijnanamaya Kosha. And then the second point which was discussed was that this shit is the cause of the transmigration from body to body, whether it's high or low. All the transmigration that happens is because of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And then it is the shit which again, because of which we go through the states of waking and dream state. So these are the 3 points which were discussed in the 186th and in the 187th verse. So now the 188th verse, not 188 actually, the next 4 verses which we will take up today is 188 to 191. These verses will discuss that Vijnanamaya Kosha is also a superimposition on the self, adhyasa, that the self is appearing as Vijnanamaya Kosha. The self is appearing as the other koshas also, and that it is appearing as the Vijnanamaya Kosha. That will be discussed from 188 to the 191st verse. So let us take up the 188th verse. What it is saying: Dehadi nishtha asrama dharma karma gunabhimanah satatang mameti Vijnana Kosha ayam ati prakasha prakrishta sannidhyavashat paratmanah atah bhavati esha upadhi asya yat atmadhihi sangsarati brahmena. So what it is speaking of the second line, first we will start with the second line, that Vijnanamaya Kosha ayam ati prakasha. Among all the koshas, it is the most resplendent, most effulgent, ati prakasha. It has excessive effulgence. Why? The reason is prakrishta sannidhyavashat paramatmana, because of its proximity to the Supreme Self. It is nearer to the Supreme Self compared to the other sheets which we have discussed till now. Being nearer to the Self, it is resplendent, it is full of illumination, ati prakasha, excessive illumination. And because of that, this Vijnanamaya Kosha itself appears as the Self. And then it gets identified. So first, the Self is illumining the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and this Vijnanamaya Kosha in turn is illuminating the mind, the senses, the organs, the Manomaya, the Pranamaya, the Annamaya Kosha. All the koshas are being illumined by this Vijnanamaya Kosha. That has been indicated in the first line. Dehadi nishtha asrama dharma karma gunabhimana satatam mameti. So because the second line, as we told, the extremely effulgent knowledge shit, because of its proximity to the Supreme Self, Now what it happens always, constantly, satatang, it is mistakes the actions based on the duties of the various stages of life. This asrama, dharma, karma. As per the stage of life, a person has a particular duty, there's dharma. And based on the duty, he has to perform the actions. So asrama, dharma, karma. So based on the asrama, they have particular duties, dharma, and based on that duty, they are going to perform particular action. So this type of action which he is going to undertake is based on the asrama, the stage of life in which he is. As a brahmachari, there are particular duties. Based on the duties, he has to resort to particular type of action. So a brahmachari is the one who among the 4 purusharthas gives more importance to dharma. This dharma, artha, kama. Dharma speaks of what? It speaks of the internalization of the values. So that's through education. It's not just academic education. The education which speaks of integration of the character. So that's the education which is the duty. Based on that, he has to study, he has to live a disciplined life, and that's the stage of brahmachari. Grihastha, he has the license for the sensuous pleasures of life and wealth. But as he has already integrated his character with dharma, so his purushartha for artha and kama, wealth and the sensuous pleasures of life, is guided by dharma. So now his duty is the pursuit of artha and kama, and which again defines his action. And similarly in the vanaprastha, the sannyasa, where the moksha, the liberation, that yes, what I have to achieve in life I have achieved. And after that I find there's a big question mark. That what after all the life is for? Just to enjoy the sense pleasures of life and to acquire wealth. But am I going to stay forever with this? It is all going to. I have to relinquish them all. I will be forced to. So then, does the life has no meaning? What's the purpose of life? So these questions comes once I have fulfilled the duties of life as a grihastha in a proper way. If I have not led my life being guided by dharma, if my pursuit for artha and kama was not guided by dharma, I will be in a state of total chaos, mental agitation. The question of pursuing the higher purpose of life, that never comes. So that's why with dharma I have to pursue the artha and the kama, and then the satiation comes. And then a sort of satiation as per the physical needs are concerned is met. And then the higher purpose of life, the question for that evolves naturally. So that again is taken care of in vanaprastha, which finds fulfillment in sannyasa. And accordingly, the duties are different. So that's why they are called asrama. Srama means labor, endeavor. The prefix a is used in the sense of encompassment. That all these asramas doesn't mean any relaxation or retirement. There is no concept of retirement in Sanatana Dharma. There is no concept of retirement. That throughout my life I have to endeavor. The nature of endeavor will change, but I have to endeavor from the beginning to the end. A is used in the sense of encompassment of that stage of life. That's what's meant by the word asrama. So we will find that our duties, our actions change as per the stage of life. So these all actions, after all, is the characteristic of this body-mind complex. The self is beyond that. as long as we are in ignorance, then we have to follow our actions based on the stages of life and gradually evolve. But they are all the characteristics, they are all related to this body. But Vijnanamaya Kosha, being illumined by the self, when in turns illumines this, all the activities of the body, the reflection of all the activities of the body on the Vijnanamaya Kosha makes the Vijnanamaya Kosha identified with all the activities which is going on in the body. So that's indicated in this first line, Dehadi Nishtha. This all the, what you see, this things which belongs to the word Nishtha means endeavor, to do something with full, this dedication, perseverance, that's Nishtha. So all the perseverance which is related to the body, that speaks of what? The various actions as per the stages of life we are going through. Ashrama, dharma, karma. Not only that, guna. Guna speaks of that apart from the ashrama, each and every individual has a particular temperament. Some are by nature sattvic, some by nature rajasic, some by nature tamasic. Some by nature is contemplative, sattvic. Some by nature is very active, rajasic. Some by nature is lethargic, tamasic. So that again decides his course of action. But they are all related to this body. So all the endeavors, nishtha, related to this body is based on two things. The stage of life, the ashrama, its dharma and its karma, its duties and its actions, corresponding actions, as well as the guna, the temperament of that person. But these all belong to this body, but because of the bridging of the Vijnanamaya Kosha between the self, it's like a bridge. It's like a thin sheath from which the light of the self is falling on all those things, and all the activities being illumined by the self through the Vijnanamaya Kosha makes the Vijnanamaya Kosha thinks all these activities as its own. That's what is meant by mama iti. Constantly it is deluding, it is constantly thinking, satatam, that these all are mine, mama iti. Just the way the mobile phone which you have in your pocket, you have a sense of belonging, this is mine, mama. All the gadgets which I have a sense of feeling, this is mine, the mama. So here also the Vijnanamaya Kosha has this sense of belonging, that these all are mine, mameti. And from that what happens? The result of that is atah bhavati esha upadhyasya. Upadhi, the attribute, just the way with the mobile phone which you have in your pocket, that creates upadhi. If it's a very good brand, you feel very proud of it. We all compare that my brand is better than the others. So the thing which belongs to me gives me my identity. My wealth gives me my identity. My possessions gives me my identity. So similarly, but they are not me. I have just a sense of possession, and that gives me a sense of identity. So here also the same thing is being indicated. The Vijnanamaya Kosha, as it possesses all those things, it is nurturing them, and from that the sense of identity comes. What does atah bhavati esha upadhyasya? All this creates that sense of identity and that attribute. Upadhi means attribute. Just a wealthy man thinks I am rich, that being rich is the attribute of that person. So here all this karma, guna of the deha is creating some attributes, is creating some adjectives for the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Atah bhavati esha upadhyasya yat atmadhi sangsarati brahmena. And because of that, the self, the Vijnanamaya Kosha thinks it's my possession. Now the self in turn takes the qualities of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So these two layers of superimposition is happening. First, the Vijnanamaya Kosha is getting identified with Deha and all its activities. And then the self, which is again reflected on the Vijnanamaya Kosha, it thinks it to be the Dhi, the Atma Dhi. It is the Dhi means Buddhi, which indicates the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So the self now thinks itself to be the Buddhi, the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And this Brahma, this delusion is the cause of transmigration. Sansarati Brahmena. This goes on through delusion, through Brahma. Because of this delusion, the transmigration process goes on and on and on. So this is the idea which we find has been spoken of in the 188th verse. So let us try to discuss it in a more specific manner. That what is happening? The first, Vijnana ayang ati prakasha prakrishta sannidhya vashat paratma. So because of its proximity to the Supreme Self, this Vijnanamaya Kosha appears to be extremely effulgent. It has an extreme, first illumination happens there. And then, this being effulgent, it in turn illumines the so-called the body, the mind, the organs. Dehadi Nishtha. This Dehadi Nishtha speaks of this Deha Adi, means the body, the organs, the mind. Everything is, and their activities is being illumined by the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And then what happens? Once it illumines them, now as we were discussing, you'll find how the mind and the Vijnanamaya Koshas are correlating. That whatever we perceive through our sense organs, the external sense organs are not the organs, they are the golakas. They are just the orifices through which the external stimuli is taken to the mind. The real organs of perceptions are in the mind, where the piecemeal perceptions happen. That all the perceptions doesn't happen as a whole. That anything has many attributes. All the attributes define that thing. Just say a flower, its color, its shape, its texture, its fragrance. All these are individual attributes. They all together defines the flower. But in the mind, this synthesis doesn't happen. What happens? All the piecemeal perceptions happen. The redness is perceived in a particular center, the shape is perceived in another particular center, its fragrance in some other center. Now these all perceptions, piecemeal perceptions, these tanmatras, they are fed to the buddhi. These all come together. The buddhi will be now synthesizing them. They will make it a composite whole. And once it is made a composite whole, in buddhi, all the impressions of these synthetic wholes are there. The one which matches, that pops up to give us the impression, oh, this is the red rose. So there are two, in the mind there are two dormant things. As in the mind, all the piecemeal perceptions are dormant. The specific stimuli activates one of them, a specific piecemeal perception. And all these piecemeal perceptions are again taken to the buddhi, where they are conglomerated, they are all synthesized. And again, in the buddhi, the dormant, there is the idea of all those conglomerates, the idea of all these conglomerates. They are all dormant. When all these piecemeal perceptions synthesizes and is given to the buddhi, the knowledge of that particular, differential knowledge of that particular object, that pops up. So now you find what is happening, that when the Vijnanamaya Kosha is illumined, then this entire process starts. Before that, everything is dormant. So Vijnanamaya Kosha, that way, is as if having a sense of possession, because of it, all these activities have initialized. And that's why it has that, as if it is the karta, it is the agent. Because of it, everything is happening. So that's why the sense of agency develops in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Because of it, all these activities are happening. And once the knowledge comes, there's another aspect of the mind is the aham vritti, this ahankara. This aham vritti now interacts with the knowledge. The knowledge by itself is not the cause of bondage. Knowledge by itself is not bondage. When the aham vritti interacts with the jnana, then various types of experiences come. This is in Yoga Sutra, this is called kleshas. Just that example we gave, that if a nutrient, you give a little nutrient in the center of the petri dish where you have lot of microbes, that nutrient is the stimuli for which the microbes, what's the response? They're drawn towards it. Why it has happened? The microbe has that aham vritti, that I am this body-mind complex. With that, the jnana vritti is the knowledge which came from that nutrient. These two are correlating with each other to give a reaction. What's the reaction? Oh, it is good for me. It is favorable for me. So this is the klesha. This is the rag. The klesha is, what's the klesha here? Raga, attachment. And that will lead to karma. What's the karma? I will be drawn towards it. If it was instead of nutrient, if it was a poison, that microbe would have run away from it. It would have just been repelled by it. So what it speaks of, the jnana vritti is there, the poison, with which the aham vritti, that I am this body-mind complex, that interacts. And then immediately that the knowledge comes from that, this interaction, what? Oh, it is not good for me. Then what's the karma? It is repelled. So now you will understand that how in the mind, this karma, knowledge, and then the action, everything is happening because of the coordination of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Unless the knowledge is generated in the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and again the aham vritti, which also is a part of this Vijnanamaya Kosha, interacts with this knowledge, no action is possible. There's no klesha, no experience is possible, and from that experience, no action also can be possible. So this aham vritti results in all these actions. So this perception and then corresponding action, everything is because of the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which gives it a sense of agency, that is the karta. And this sense of karta in turn is again superimposed on the self. And now this becomes the cause of the transmigration. As we say that constantly something is echoing within. The self is perfect. It is eternal. But because of its identification with the body-mind complex, it can never realize that perfection and eternity through the body. But as it is deluded that it is the body-mind complex, it tries to realize the echo which is coming through the body-mind complex, that it is perfect, it is eternal. Through the body-mind complex, it tries to realize, and that results in the evolution which speaks of transmigration. This body-mind complex falls off, the mind is still there, the sthula sharira has fallen off, the sukshma sharira, that also is the thing which still exists, it has not died. It has still that aspiration. I have to realize the eternity and the perfection and the satiety, that I am beyond all need, beyond all wants. These are the two basic things. I have to realize. Again, for that, it evolves into some higher organism. And that's how the transmigration process goes on and on and on. So that's how this means Atah Bhavati Esha. And with each and every superimposition, we develop those upadhis. Oh, I am holy, I am rich. All these are upadhis. See, all these are developing as per the actions which I am doing, which actions are superimposed on the self, giving me a sense of all these upadhis, of these attributes. And this again results in the transmigration because of the eternal quest to realize the infinite dimension of my existence in the form of eternity and fulfillment. This quest is constantly going on, resulting in that process of transmigration. So this is the thing which has been spoken of in the 188th verse. So So thus we can find that the entire process of transmigration is because of the delusion. The moment the self gets deluded, first by identifying with the Vijnanamaya kosha, in turn identifying with the succeeding koshas, the Manomaya, Pranamaya and Annamaya kosha. Because of this delusion, the transmigration process starts. It has been initiated. It is going on, and we don't know from how long it's going on. As we don't know when it started, it is called Anadi. It's going on. And then in the next verse, what it is saying? The 189th verse. Yah ayang vijnanamaya praneshu ridis furati ayang jyoti kutastha sanatma karta bhokta bhavati upadhistha. So this Atma which is verily into here, this word yang ayang vijnanamaya, this vijnanamaya doesn't speak of kosha, that the Atma which is intelligent itself, ya ayang vijnanamaya, yes, vijnana means intelligence, the Atman which verily is intelligence, that what is, it shines, it is shining, sfurati, by its own effulgence, sfurati ayang jyoti, the Atman which verily is shining through the organs of perception and the organs of action. So here the word prana doesn't actually mean the vitality. The vitality which means it is called, means in Sanskrit there is some, I won't go to the technicalities of the grammar. So if I just say it in prana, that is of course a translation. But another way of translating is for those who are in association with the prana. Means the organs of perception cannot work without the prana. The organs of action cannot work without the prana. So here it is used in the prana is used in the sense of association. So that way here prana means the organs of perception and the organs of action. We find, we will come to it, that the same, this verse actually has its reference in a mantra in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that we will quote just now. So first let us go through that sloka, that because of the effulgence of the self, which is ever intelligent, it shines forth through the organs of perception and the organs of actions, which has been indicated as prana here, and through the buddhi, which has been indicated as riddhi. That in Vedanta, always the buddhi, the center of buddhi is spoken of as the hridaya. Hridayena hi janati, that we know through our heart. So it has some validity, that you will find the feelings are all expressed. When you are angry, a person, if he gets terribly angry, he gets a heart attack. That our feelings do have to do something with our heart center, and that's what the rishis of the Vedas always is to look at the center of buddhi as the heart. So hridayeshu, this Riddha speaks of the heart. So and that speaks of in turn the buddhi. So the buddhi as well as the organs of perception and the organs of action are illumined by the self. And though the self is immutable, kutastha means, the word kutastha is very interesting, that which never gets affected. What it means? It actually means the anvil of the blacksmith. Kuta is the anvil of the blacksmith. So the blacksmith will be hitting the iron till it becomes red hot. When it becomes red hot, it can be bent. It can be easily bent. So first he will make the iron red hot and put it over the anvil and go on hammering it to give it a particular shape. So when he is doing this, he is constantly hammering the red hot iron placed on the anvil, but the anvil in no way gets affected. So much of hammering is going on, it doesn't get affected. So this is the idea which is used to describe the immutability of the self. The self is immutable. Nothing can change it, transform it. It is just like the anvil of the blacksmith. That all the happenings of life are like hammering on the self, but the self is in no way affected. Because the thing which is superimposed can no way affect the thing on which it is superimposed. Just as we say, this snake which is superimposed on the rope, can that snake inflict any poison on the rope? No. Can the huge reservoir which I see in the mirage, it is something which has been projected from the desert. Can that huge reservoir, that mirage, in any way drench even a single particle of sand? No. So that's the idea of the kutastha. The thing which is projected in no way can affect the self. The self in reality is in no way affected. So this kutastha sanatma, though it is unaffected, but because of the delusion, it thinks itself. It in reality has not been affected. Just the way when I keep a red flower near a prism, in proximity of the prism appears to be red. But has it really become red? It appears to be tinged with that red color. But it has not in any way really got tinged with that color. It just appears. So similarly, here also, when Atma is in proximity of this body-mind complex, first the Vijnanamaya Kosha and then the other koshas, the self's illumination is taken by this all the organs of so-called the Vijnanamaya Kosha and the other koshas. The Vijnanamaya Kosha and the Manomaya Kosha appears to be intelligence because of the intelligence of the self, and also both will be taking, each will be taking others' attributes. And all the actions of the body-mind complex, that again taints, as if taints the self. The self takes on those by delusion and thinks those activities as its own. So that's how it thinks itself to be the karta and the bhokta. It is the one who is the agent behind all the actions, the karta, and again it is he who is experiencing. That how the sense of karta comes, as we told, the jnana vritti comes. How? When the mind, the piecemeal perceptions is presented to the buddhi conglomerates them to create the jnana, the knowledge, that vritti. And that jnana vritti now interacts with the aham vritti, the ego. When this happens, then the sense of agency comes. The moment the ego comes into picture, the agency. Oh, I have to go towards it. That example is very simple. But based on that, all other activities can be described. That anything favorable, I am drawn towards it, raga. Anything not favorable, fight and flight response, dvesha, vinivesha. So all these actions, behind that the sense of karta is there. When the jnana vritti got interacted with the aham vritti, the ego, this karta, sense of karta comes. And from where the bhoga comes? The bhoga comes from the experience. When this aham vritti is interacted with the jnana vritti, first comes the experience that it is something favorable for me. This experience, it is something unfavorable for me. So bhoga comes first, and based on that, the action comes, for which the sense of agency, the one who is experiencing, he is again acting, as if acting. So all this is actually of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. But the self, being in proximity of the Vijnanamaya Kosha, thinks them to be its attributes. So the self is neither the doer nor the enjoyer, but because of its proximity with the thing which has been superimposed upon it, it thinks itself to be the karta and the bhokta. So that's why. So from where the sense of karta originates? This is a jnana vritti, the determinative knowledge, in association with the ahankara vritti, responds to the vrittis in specific ways. And as per the fixed stimuli response conditioning, you know that so many mental modules are formed. This constant in the entire process of evolution. Mental modules, each module has a fixed stimuli response conditioning. And in our mind, there are such innumerable mental modules. At a particular situation, only one module will be activated as per the circumstances, and which has a fixed response. For that stimuli, it has a fixed response. It will immediately respond, giving an impression that it is I who have decided to act in that way. But actually it's not. It is the fixed stimuli response conditioning which decides how I will take course to an action. So there are innumerable, even in modern psychology, there are innumerable such examples. We have illustrated it so many times. I am not going to illustrate it again now. But this is a known fact that actually we are not deciding. These are mental modules with a fixed stimuli mental response conditioning is deciding as per a particular circumstance. To give just a common example which we will find, that we think that I am deciding, but you will find that how our decision changes as per the circumstances. The same me when I am with my friend is a total different person when I am with my children or when I am with my family. And again, when I am in my office with my colleagues, you'll find as per the environment, your total nature is changing. The way you react to the particular circumstance is changing. That speaks of the particular mental module getting activated as per the circumstances, which has particular stimuli response conditioning. But when our nature changes, isn't it we feel that it is I who am responding to this particular situation? Do we ever feel my mind is making me behave in this way? Never. We always feel it is I who am deciding to behave in such a way when I am with my family, and to behave in a particular way when I am with my children, behave in a particular way when I am with my colleagues or I am with my friends. So in all the circumstances, the behavior is actually automatic. But I never feel. I feel it is I who decide. So that speaks of that sense of karta. And this, from the sense of, and what happens? All the actions which we do and the result which ensures from it, and for which the joys and sorrows through which we go through the life. Again we feel I am the bhokta, I am the experiencer. So this karta and bhokta is something which is going on almost mechanically in the body-mind complex. Through the process of evolution, it has all developed all those things. But because of its proximity with the self constantly is being deluded that it is the karta, it is the bhokta. In reality, it is immutable. That's the word. It is kutastha. It is kutastha. But all these upadhis, all these attributes, and the corresponding experiences, joys and sorrows, which the self starts feeling that it is experiencing, but actually it is beyond that. So just the way when I am watching the movie, for the time being, for the 2 hours, I get totally identified with those characters. I laugh, I cry. The movie is over, I come out, and then suddenly I realize, oh, it was just a movie. I had nothing to do with all those characters there. But when I was watching the movie, I was so identified that I was sometimes enjoying, laughing with the characters, sometimes crying with the characters. Sometimes I was in agony, sometimes I was in grief, sometimes I was terribly angry. But when the movie is over, I come out and I feel, oh, it was just a movie. So that's the same thing. The self is witnessing the movie called life, for which the substratum is this body-mind complex. Based on this substratum, everything is going on and the self is witnessing. Though it is in no way, does the movie in any way affect us? I am the same person who is after watching the movie, the same person who was before watching the movie. Nothing has actually changed. I am the same person. But while watching the movie, I was so identified that I became as if one with those characters. So here also the same thing. The self is kutastha. Nothing as such changes for the self. It is transcendent. It is above all those things. It is just witnessing. But as you know, when it is witnessing, it gets so involved with it that it becomes as if identified with them, and it thinks that it is the karta, it is the bhokta. So that's being indicated in the 189th verse. And then the Atman gets embodied as the psychophysical entity because of its association with buddhi. This will be spoken of in the 190th and in the 191st verse. So this idea of superimposition has been spoken of in these 4 verses, 188, 89, 90, 91. But in 1991, it speaks that as the Atman gets embodied in the psychophysical entity, the Atman which is Sarvatma, the word Sarvatmaka you will be used, which is all pervading, gets localized in the body-mind complex because of its association with the buddhi. First it gets association with the buddhi, in turn which it gets association with the mind and the organs, creating the sense that I am this limited body-mind complex. In reality, I am non-local, non-dual consciousness, all-pervading. That all-pervading self, which is Sarvatmaka, appears to be embodied in this body-mind complex. The one appears as many. There's a famous quotation of Schopenhauer that the consciousness is a singular of which plural is not known. It's a wonderful quotation. The same thing here. It is a non-dual conscious principle. Because of its association with the buddhi, is appearing as so many embodied beings. Just example which we give, the sun in the sky is being reflected in the innumerable waves in the ocean. And each wave has the reflection of the sun. Each wave being identified with the reflection of the sun is innumerable. But actually, in reality, it is one. It transcends that. But because of its identification with the reflection in the waves, it appears to be innumerable. Not only innumerable, it appears to having a parichheda, a boundary. The wave is the boundary. Parichheda, but actually it is beyond all sorts of boundary. It is something non-local. So that's the idea which has been spoken of in the 190th verse. What it is saying? Swayam parichhedam upetya buddhe tadatma doshena parang vrishatmanah sarvatmakah san api vikshate swayam swatah prithaktvena mridah ghataniva. So by the defect of adhyasa, because of this false identification, tadatma doshena, that in this verse, that word in the first line we find tadatma doshena. What it means? Because of the dosha, because of the defect of false identification. This tadatma, what I am not, tat is means something apart from me. With that I am feeling identified. Tat atma, tadatma. And because of this defect, what is happening? I am identifying myself with mrishatmana. Mrisha means something false, mithya. That which is not atma, mithyatma, is Vijnanamaya Kosha. This is a mithyatma. With that I am getting identified. So mithyatmana means, mrishatmana means mithyatmana. That which is not the self, which is the wrong idea of the self, which is the false self. So this, because of its identification with that, and which is this false self? The buddhi of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. This buddhi, the determinative faculty. So it thinks itself that it is the buddhi. That's the common experience for all of us. Even in the entire Western psychology, Western philosophy, you will find the soul is identified with the mind. That I think, therefore I am. The famous quotation of Descartes that speaks of the identification with your buddhi. So this is the thing which is spoken. This is false identification. The self is beyond the buddhi. And because of this, the Atman, which is all pervading, Sarvatmaka, sun, though it is all pervading, sarvatmakam san api, though it is all pervading, vikshate swayang swatah, it is constantly seeing itself as what? As something separate, segregated, within having a boundary. The body-mind complex defines my boundary. The non-dual self appears as that. It is just like the example is given here, prithaktvena mrida ghatan iva. Just like the way I think the clay to be something different from the pot. It is the same clay without any form. When it is molded into a particular shape, it becomes that pot or the pitcher. The pitcher has a particular name. It has a particular boundary. But the clay as such is something formless, shapeless. So that when it is given a particular shape, in essence it is the clay alone. But because of the nama and the rupa, it appears to be a pot which I think is different from the clay. Is it in any way different from the clay? No, the clay is same as the pot. You remove the name and the form. The idea of these are the attributes, the name and the form. You remove, what it remains is the clay and clay alone. So similarly, if you remove the attributes of the buddhi, what remains alone is the pure intelligence. But because of all the attributes of the buddhi superimposed upon the self, this self that I that feel that something as a witness is separate from the body-mind complex. It is actually the witness alone exists. But because the same way that you differentiate, the moment the buddhi, the mind comes into picture, all the attributes that defines it, that gives a sense of separation, that this buddhi is something separate from the self. As previously we have discussed, this duality doesn't exist at all. That in the previous classes we were saying that this is the controversy which is going on for ages. The idealists say that everything is a projection of the mind. The external objective world doesn't exist. That's the idealist. The realists say, no, there is something outside. There is an objective reality. The idealists say there is nothing an objective reality. This fight is going on. In Vedanta, what's the decision? They are saying very nicely that this duality actually doesn't exist. That it is all the self and self alone. When I am deluded, I don't see the self. I see the body-mind complex alone. The moment I see the self, this body-mind complex and its projection of the world, that is no more there. The best way to understand is that it is the snake rope, this allegory. So when I am deluded, when I see the snake in the rope, do I have an idea that it is the rope which is appearing as snake? No. Then I see the rope and I see the snake and snake alone. The moment the delusion falls off, I don't see the snake at all. I see the rope alone. So it is the same reality which because of delusion appears as this psychophysical existence and the world. And when the delusion is not there, then this body-mind complex is not at all existent. The self alone exists. So this duality of the consciousness and the matter is that way resolved by the Advaita Vedanta. So here what it is saying, that because of its identification of the non-dual, which is Sarvatmaka, is getting identified in the body-mind complex, the thing which was Sarvatmaka now appears to be having the Paricheda, boundary. And as we say that this is the cause of the so-called Bhava Vyadhi, the disease called worldliness. The word disease is something very interesting. Disease means dis-ease. Our ease has gone whenever we find that awareness or consciousness gets localized, our ease goes off. Then we say we are diseased. When we are in health, we are enjoying health, you will find that my awareness, my consciousness is as if throbbing through the entire body. I am not aware of any particular part of the body. See a small child jumping, bubbling with full of life. Even if it gets a little injured, it is not aware. When it comes back to home, the mother says, oh, where you got that cut? It is not aware. It is so full of life that it is not aware of any particular part of his body. The life is throbbing through the entire body. And then when we say we are diseased, when that life which was permeating through the entire body-mind complex gets localized. What's the sign? I go to the doctor and say, my knees are paining. My heart, there's an ache in the heart. There's an ache in the stomach. My head is reeling. So you see the conscious, when I was enjoying health, I was not aware of any particular part of body. The health, the life was throbbing through the entire body. Now it got localized. So similarly, this life itself is, in spiritual sense, is a big disease. Why? The sarvatmaka, the all-pervading, the self, which is the self of all, that has now got as if encapsulated within a boundary, paricheda. And that's the cause of our disease, of all our suffering. So this is being indicated in this verse, that because of this identification, that all the locality comes into existence. The non-local appears to be local. And that's how the shape, when it becomes local, it is differentiated from all other localized entity by its shape and form. Just like the various pots made of clay, each can be differentiated from the other because of its shape and form. Remove the shape and form and its utility, nama, rupa, artha, kriya, karitva, if I remove that, it's just the clay. So that's the idea. This even in Chandogya Upanishad we find vacharambhanam namadheyam mrittika iti eva ityaiva satyam. The mrittika alone is the truth. Everything else is just namadheyam. It is just the name and the form, nothing else. So here also the same idea is being indicated. The non-dual consciousness, when it gets localized within particular boundary, then all these differentiations comes into existence in the form of name, form, artha, kriya, utility. In reality, it is all the same. So, after saying this, in the next verse, with an example, they will just illustrate this idea. Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya will illustrate this idea, that how the non-local gets localized to create a sense of boundary which is fixed within a particular shape, size, utility, giving and designated by a particular name. What's the example he's giving? Upadhi, the 191st verse. The Upadhi Sambandha Vashat Paramatma hi Upadhi Dharman Anubhati Tadguna. Because of its association with the attributes, Upadhi Sambandha Vashat, Paramatma, the Supreme Self, he Upadhi Dharman Anubhati. It appears to be in possession of all those attributes. All those attributes are as if of the self. The one who is beyond attributes, by its association with the entity, psychophysical entity which has certain attributes based on the stage of life in which it is, and the guna, the karma, and just as we discussed, all those things defines him. But actually it is something non-dual. And the example he is giving is very nice. Aya vikaran. Aya means iron. Suppose you take a spherical iron and you are hitting it, making it is red hot. It is by hitting it, you are making it red hot. The fire which has no shape, fire as such has no shape, now appears in the red hot iron as spherical, golaka. If it is cylindrical, it will appear as cylindrical. The fire which has no shape takes as if the shape the thing which it is hitting. The moment it becomes red hot, it takes the shape. So that's the example. Aya vikaran avikari vanhivat. And Vanhi, the fire, which is avikari, which has no particular shape, that takes a particular shape. So, ayam vikaran. So similarly, sada eka rupa api para swabhavat. Though it is eka rupa, same, no change in it, the self, it appears as to be having different attributes and different bodies because of its superimposition of all the characteristics of the thing with which it is superimposed. So this idea, the Supreme Self, the Paramatma, even though eternally unchanging and transcendent, sada eka rupa api parasvabhavat, owing to its connection with the superimposition, upadhi sambandha vashat, assumes the quality of the superimposed. Upadhi dharman, it takes the characteristics of that. And the example is, it is like the formless fire, assuming the shape of the red hot iron. Ayah vikaran avikari vannivat. So this is how the superimposition of the Vijnanamaya Kosha is being, the self is appearing as the Vijnanamaya Kosha. This superimposition is being described in these verses. Now, we will find in the next two verses, we are just giving a prelude to it. We are not going into those two verses. This next two verses is the question of the disciple after hearing this discourse on superimposition. A very intelligent question the disciple will be asking in the next two verses. That okay, you say that the self alone is, because of the ignorance, the superimposition happens. And you say this ignorance is anadi, is beginningless. Then how can there be liberation? Something which is beginningless, the self is anadi, the ignorance is also anadi. So this entails in the idea that I am this limited body-mind complex. I am a jiva. I am having a particular paricheda. I am limited between this body-mind complex. If something is anadi, then how can it end? So how can there be liberation? So this is the question which the disciple is going to ask in the next two verses, and the teacher will answer these two questions to explain that how liberation is possible. Though theoretically it appears that in no way liberation is possible, but it is possible. How it is possible? In answer to those two questions, the teacher will be replying in the succeeding verses. That again we will take up in the next class. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.